What we're watching for in Week 5, let's jump into some of the big games. The biggest of all, the AFC North showdown between the Bengals and the Ravens. It's Ravens minus 3.5. Not a lot of respect for Joe Burrow and co. The total on that one is a pretty high 48 as well. Now, I think the thing to look for in this game is just, do you think that the Bengals are just going to gash the Ravens secondary like they did last season?
Yeah, I mean, I always like home teams in primetime games. I feel like they get up, especially tough loss last week to the Buffalo Bills. So I do think the Ravens sort of get up for this game, and they play better defense than you might expect. Sunday night games on NBC and Peacock. Of course, I'm a company man. But having said that, no team has allowed more passing yards per game than the Baltimore Ravens. They're giving up 312, right? And teams facing the Ravens are averaging over 44 pass attempts per game. You think about the two games that Joe Burrow played against the Ravens last year, 941 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, massive games. We talked about that in preseason. We're like, one of the reasons why Joe Burrow's overall production last year was inflated because he had these 2 crazy games against the Ravens. And so, yeah, I mean, I have him as a top 6 quarterback this week. I think Burrow has a monster game. Give me the over on his passing yards. Give me the over on Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and their passing yards. I think it's going to be a bit of a shootout here.
Yeah, I think at some point in the season, the Baltimore secondary is going to get a lot better, but right now it's not being great. They're still below average defending deep passes, but there's a lot of talent in that secondary. There's Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton. There's going to be growing pains there, but as those guys come off their injuries and get healthier and get more gelled together, I think that there should be something there. And yeah, look, what Jamar Chase and T. Higgins did last season against the Ravens, Jamar Chase is the one that certainly stands out with 326 receiving yards in 2 games, destroyed Marlon Humphrey in that first matchup, 53.6 fantasy points for Chase, 56.6 for Higgins, which is absurd. At the same time, I don't think they're going to put up those type of numbers, but they'll put up numbers.
Ravens gave up over 300 passing yards to Mac Jones and Joe Flacco.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump into.
Anyway, you're starting all your Bengals.
Yeah, you're starting all your Bengals, including Joe Mixon, who Zach Taylor is intent on running 20 times a game, even if it's for 2 yards per carry.
God bless.
If you just ride with Joe Mixon until Zach Taylor decides to do something different. All right, let's jump to Cardinals-Eagles.
Okay.
The line right now is Cardinals +5 at home to Philadelphia. Not a lot of respect for a team that was a 1 seed in the second half of last season. Now, do we think that this offense can keep up with Philadelphia, and which Cardinals are you starting?
I mean, you're starting Kyler, and you're starting Zach Ertz.
Yep.
Right? And you're starting Hollywood Brown.
Yep.
Those are the 3 that you're definitely starting.
So James Conner, not a definite.
I'm at running back 29. So I mean, I think he's a touchdown dependent flex play. I'm concerned about him, right? I mean, there's a guy who through 4 weeks is averaging under 11 fantasy points per game. He's running back 30 on the season. He's had under 60 scrimmage yards in 3 or 4 games. The only running back to get more than 40 yards from scrimmage against these Eagles is DeAndre Swift. And over the past 3 weeks, no team has allowed less rushing yards per game to running backs than the Philadelphia Eagles. They're averaging 46 yards allowed rushing to running backs. This is the Eagles. So, no, I don't think James Conner is a must start. Again, you may not have a better option, but Conner made the hate list this week. I just lower expectations, unfortunately, for James Conner. Look, you're obviously starting Kyler Murray, and I like Zach Ertz, who made the love list. Again, he leads all tight ends in terms of red zone targets. He's had multiple red zone targets in every game this year, double-digit targets in 2 or 3 games. We always say start your tight ends against Philadelphia, especially when you think about Slay and Bradbury. They're so good on the perimeter. I think that's one area of the field you could attack. Revenge game narrative as well. I think Ertz has a nice game here against his former team. Finally, I guess, Marquise Brown,
I think you have to start him. He's had 39 targets the past 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. So.
Yep. I think that with Conner, the issue is that, they're a mediocre team right now, Arizona. I'm sorry, Arizona, but the 5.5 point dogs at home, that's their reality right now. And when you're a middle-of-the-road team and you don't have like Jonathan Taylor as your running back, then touchdowns are just going to be fluky week to week. And Connor got 16 last year because the Cardinals were competing for the 1 seed in the second half of the season. I do think quickly on the betting line here, I would be taking Philadelphia. It's ticking up to -5.5, and the reason is that the Cardinals, they were 6.5-point dogs to the Chiefs in week 1. I think the Cardinals are worse than we thought coming into the season, and I think the Eagles are just as good as the Chiefs were coming into the season now. So I would be taking the Eagles -6.5. Let's quickly jump into Dolphins Jets, which is maybe a more interesting game than it looked preseason, certainly with the Teddy Bridgewater element. Are you downgrading the Dolphins wide receivers with Bridgewater?
I am. I mean, slightly, but for our purposes, I don't think it matters.
No.
We were encouraged by the fact that Bridgewater was taking some deep shots. Remember, they've had now 10 days. They're coming off the mini bye, right, because it was the Thursday night game the last week. And so they've had 10 days. Mike McDaniels has 10 days to realize, okay, I'm playing the Jets with Teddy Bridgewater as my starting quarterback. Tua Tagovailoa not going to play in this game. By the way, it's worth noting that, and I tweeted this out from my Twitter account, but that there is slight concern on Marquise Brown. Right, I'm going to read it here real quickly. But basically, Barry Jackson, who covers the team for many years, he just said, "quote Tyreek Hill had something come up with quad. Quote, we are treating it and we are hopeful he will play." That's Mike McDaniel. So that's a tweet from Barry Jackson, who's covered the team for like 35 years. You see it there on your screen as well. Hopeful.
It's not great.
That's not great.
It's not what you want. Coming off a
he
long,
will definitely
long
play.
week as well.
Coming off 10 days, right? So it's just something to monitor. We'll have more on that Sunday morning on Fantasy Football pregame. But assuming Tyreek Hill is active, assuming you're still starting Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, the positives of Teddy Bridgewater, and again, we were encouraged by that he took a few deep shots last week, but he's super accurate, especially in short. And with 10 days to prepare this game, my expectation is McDaniels figured out ways to do some slants and some crossers where you can get those guys matched up one-on-one and take advantage of their speed, get lots of yards after the catch, which is what's great about Teddy Bridgewater as well. Certainly the Jets matchup doesn't scare you.
No, and the fear with Bridgewater would be that, check down Teddy. Teddy covers. He doesn't throw it deep. Well, he threw it 61 yards in the air and completed the pass to Tyreek Hill. So it's not like Tua is Justin Herbert with his arm either. All right, Bryce Hall, who has kind of started to take over this backfield, I think. 45 snaps to Michael Carter's 29 last week. Is Bryce Hall definitely the guy you want going forward in that Jets backfield?
Feels that way. I ranked him as 21st this week. Season high in touches, and as you mentioned, the snaps, his snap rate 66%. You see it there on your screen as his snap rate has gotten higher pretty much every week. 45%, like whatever. The Browns game, that was weird, and it was that big comeback. But 51% in week 3, 66% at the Steelers. Going against a Dolphins defense as well. I think what's encouraging, look, the Dolphins have a good defense here, but Hall, who was playing last week, played 12 of the 16 snaps they had on 3rd and 4th down. So, the thought process of like, oh, well, Michael Carter's the passing down back. No, I mean, they like Bryce Hall in the passing game as well. He's gotten 6 or more targets in 3 out of 4 games this year, which that gives you the confidence that there's a floor, even if Miami starts blowing him out.
Yep, and I mean, Bryce Hall, he was a tier 1 running back by himself coming into the draft. His measurables compared to Jonathan Taylor, like if they give him the run, he has all the talent in the world.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.